Good morning, everyone. This is Rachel. Thanks for clicking on my video. And I came in this morning to do a review of Surviving Compton. Now, this is the biopic about Michel'Le's life. And I must say that after watching the movie, I really didn't want to do a review on this movie. I had to think about it for a little bit and then gather my thoughts about, exactly what I felt about the movie and what we saw, occurring in the movie. And so I'll just get right to it. I think that the girl that they had playing Michel'Le did a really good job. She had Michel'Le's voice and her little quirky mannerisms down. Now, getting to Michel'Le's voice, a lot of people have made comment about, is that her real voice? Now, I remember when Michel'Le first came out, these folks are a little bit younger than me, so I grew up on their music. And I remember when she very first was on Soul Train, and Don Cornelius asked her about her voice. And basically, she just explained that that is the voice that God gave her. Now, I also remember years ago seeing an interview with Michel'Le, and Michel'Le talked about not speaking for several years when she was little. She talked about that she, for the first 4 years of her life, didn't speak. And when she finally did, she had this very soft, high voice, and it's just basically the voice that God gave her. So that's just one little interesting fact that I remember, her stating about this voice that everyone says is annoying. So, getting to the movie. Now, everyone is saying about this movie that Dre ought to be ashamed of himself, and, how could she hook up with Suge Knight, and just this movie was all over the place. As I watched NWA get started and watched Michel'Le's interplay with all of those guys, I just felt like Michel'Le was like the house bitch. She was the girl that, you know, brought them their drinks, made sure they had things to eat, and just, from hanging around them, she ended up hooking up with Dre. Now, from what I'm understanding, when those two got together, they were between 16 and 18. And I don't see this story so much about the men that were in NWA. This is about her life and how she fit into that NWA whole little framework. So I wanted to concentrate on her from this movie. When you watch this movie, everyone comes away with one thing or another. Everyone sees different things in this movie. And what I got from this entire movie is Michel'Le is just telling us that she was stupid and that she didn't know better, and that because of her upbringing and what she saw, with the women in her family being abused, and having to go live with her grandmother because her mother was from one abusive relationship to another. This is what you get: a child that doesn't know any better. Now, this is a prime example of what your child sees and hears can affect the life that they lead. So Michel'Le gets with Dre and all of them, and she starts singing. And the first thing that got me is that she didn't get paid for what, she contributed to NWA. You know, that first song out, she got nothing. She was just happy to be part of what they were doing there. And then we get to the relationship with her and Dre. Now, because they got together so young, there wasn't really like a lead up to their relationship. But when you're 16, 17, 18, you see a boy, you like a boy, you start dating a boy. You know, this is not adults dating, these are teenagers dating. And then I think with the abuse, abuse doesn't start off with them just socking you in your face immediately. It's a process. It's a push here, it's a shove there, it's a smack here. It builds to that final point where they actually hit you. So prior to him actually coming in, from what we saw on the screen, and him beating her in that bed, I'm pretty sure that there was a lot of um, emotional abuse, mental abuse leading up to that first time he actually hit her. And the abuse was bad. I don't think that Lifetime went as far as they could have, and I think that's due to Michel'Le, because I don't know if you guys know, but Dre cracked her ribs before, so bad that they didn't heal right, and that on her left side she has a lump. He actually kicked her and cracked her ribs. He also broke her nose, and she had to have her nose reconstructed. So I think that accounts for, this nose that everyone talks about now. She had to have reconstructive surgery. Now, when we look at this movie, the first thing that we say when we watch, her being abused on the screen is, why didn't she leave? You know, it's easy for us to be armchair quarterbacks in her life, but when you grow up, you know, seeing all the women around you in these abusive relationships, you have a grandmother that's telling you that, just take it. It's what women do. It's a man's prerogative to beat his woman. When that is ingrained in you, you don't know any better. And I feel sorry for the upbringing that she had, which allowed her to go through this, because when you look at the movie, I just saw a naive girl that ended up with the guy that was controlling and abusive, and she, for some reason, hung on to that relationship because she thought it was the thing to do. Now, I as I watched the movie, I wondered why the other fellas in NWA didn't step up and help her. But when I thought about it, back then, when they were doing their rise to fame, this was all part of that rap gang. Like the putting women out there in negative ways, and, bitches and hoes and this, and basically they really didn't have any respect for women. They women were to be used as sex things, and you know you saw it in the movie with Dre having all these different women, all these babies all over the place, and it was just the climate that they lived in. They were young, they were beginning to be successful, there were women all over, and basically they took those women and they used them. And Michel'Le sat on the sidelines and watched Dre go through woman after woman. And you wonder what in her allowed her to to accept that, because she was a cute girl. She didn't she didn't need to be in that relationship or deserve what Dre put her through. And I think what happened is, because he got with her so young, she was so young, and to be with him all those years, being abused and um, treated so badly and disrespected, that it kind of broke her into a million pieces. She already had come from a home life that was not stable. And then she gets into this relationship with this young man, and then he beats and abuses her and, treats her like a second class citizen. I think he broke her into a million pieces. And that is the life that she was leading. To be constantly put down, to be told that you're stupid. Um, Even in an interview that I saw of Michel'Le, Michel'Le said that he would publicly embarrass her, tell her to go somewhere and sit her stupid ass down. And she said that basically the reason why she wasn't in Straight Outta Compton is because she was, to them, just the quiet, abused girlfriend. She really didn't have any, you know, I guess, I don't know, to them, what she represented. She wasn't worthy enough to be put in the movie. That just shows you what they thought of her. Even though in the beginning, Michel'Le sang background on a lot of their songs, which helped get those songs out there to the public and make those songs very popular. They didn't feel that she had any value or worth in including her in the movie. And actually, I don't know if I believe Michel'Le did this movie to get back at Dre. I think what Michel'Le did is, she was in the public eye now, and Lifetime came to her and asked her, about doing the movie. I'm pretty sure she had to do a lot of soul searching, because what she went through with Dre was really bad. It was bad enough to get her on drugs and abusing alcohol and, being in therapy. And she went through a lot with that man. And it went on for several years. Now, I think by the time that Suge came into the picture, Michel'Le, all throughout the beginning of the movie, thought that Suge was a bad guy, that he was not something to be played with, that, she just couldn't see herself with this thug. And that's what she said in the movie. Remember in the movie when he gave her the necklace and she wanted the necklace off her neck? But I think that what happened is that things were so bad with Dre. Now think about this. It had to be really, really bad with Dre for her to think that Suge was her savior. I mean, think about that. Suge Knight, who would have ever thought that he even had an ounce of emotion in that big body of his? But in an interview that I saw with her, Michel'Le talks about that anyone who would have come along at that point in her life when she was so low, when she was abusing drugs and, alcohol, and just she was broken, could have gotten her, because she needed a lifesaver at that point. One thing about domestic violence is it damages a person. It takes everything that they have inside and twists it into something that is irrational, is fearful, is, just as I keep saying, broken. So when Suge Knight came along and he was trying to help repair some of the things that were broken by Dre, she grabbed on to him and, you know, took that hand that he was reaching out to her, even though we all know that Suge Knight was probably not the best person to be taking a helping hand from, but she was desperate. So when he offered to put her in rehab, she accepted it. And then I think what happened is she was grateful. And then she became his house bitch. You know, all of this is a psychological thing. When you're being abused, obviously something is wrong with you because you're allowing these men to do what they're doing to you. No person in their right mind would sit back and allow someone to beat, stomp, you know, break your nose, crack your ribs. Think about that. You have to be out of your mind to allow that. So these women that are being abused, Michel'Le being abused, they're not in their right mind. Domestic violence is a sickness. You have to be, as a woman, sick at that point to allow the man to do that to you. Now she gets with Suge Knight, and she's in his world. Now, even though he helped her out, we see in the movie that he too smacked the shit out of her, and there was some domestic abuse there. Now, that scene that we saw in the movie where he hit her, he dislocated her jaw. You know, his big ass, one hit and he could fuck her little ass up, and that's what he did. But she also says that after that, he never hit her again. But then look at all the turmoil that his life brought her. Again, she had to be going through some type of mental thing, that allowed her to even accept what he gave her. But again, that goes back to this whole thing of domestic abuse. We all know someone, or even if you're listening and you've been through domestic abuse, we all have that person in our life that we know that may have been abused or may be, currently being abused. And you always ask, why don't they leave? Why don't they just pack up their stuff and leave? So I come away with, some women don't have the strength. Their minds are such that they allow a person to abuse them. And it takes them a while to get to the point of realizing that that person that is abusing them is sick, and that it's time for them to get up and leave. We've seen women that stay to the point where they're murdered by their abuser. So this is all like a cycle, a cycle. So when she was with Suge Knight, you know, all of the craziness of his life of being married, and she really wasn't married to him. He was in jail. Those two were quote unquote together for 8 years, and Suge Knight was in jail over 6 years of their, I guess, relationship. He was in jail 6 of those 8 years, but he controlled her from jail. She was so grateful for, you know, him stepping in and taking her and her son out of the mess that Dre had started, that she allowed him to control her from jail. What I come away with is Michel'Le was a pretty girl, but she had issues herself, and she still does. I think, from watching Michel'Le on R&B Divas, she's still battling some of those demons that she went through with Dre and Suge Knight. Because when I watched her on R&B Divas, it was obvious that Michel'Le was, again abusing some type of prescription med because she was out of it. She was slowly again cracking up on R&B divas. We sat there and watched those ladies try to figure out what was going on with her, and she just kept saying that there were things in her life that were, I guess, making her act you know as she did. Michel'Le needs to be, and I hope she's still in intensive therapy, because when she met both of these men, she was broken. Her upbringing, from all these interviews that she's done over the years, you can clearly see this girl didn't come from a stable background, you know, and that created this woman that allowed these men to do what they did to her, even to them writing her out of Straight Outta Compton. Basically, she said that that was their story to tell. It was from their perspective. The women that were in their life during the time that they were becoming this, you know, famous group didn't really have an impact where they felt that those women should be included in their movie. And basically, she said that was fine with her. But I think in making this movie, she was sending out a message. We were in your life, and she's representing all the women that probably came in and out of their lives during the time that they were becoming famous. She was sending a message to them that said, you pushed us to the background. You abused us. You had babies by us, and you didn't pay child support, and you did this, that, and the other to us. But we were of value too. That's what I got from this movie. She was sending a message to Dre that I'm over what you did to me, but I have a right to tell my story, because a lot of people doubt, you know, that Michel'Le's story is authentic. They think she's lying, but I remember whispers back then, back in the 80s and the 90s, of his abuse. You have to think about it this way. People who are our age, think about, you guys are sitting watching the lives of Beyonce and Jay-Z and Rihanna and Chris Brown. Years from now, when your kids are asking you questions, or about these people, because you're actually watching them day to day, and reading news stories and seeing things on the internet, you're going to have a different perspective than what your child will have 10 years from now. They're just going to be going by, you know, what is happening then, and what people are saying 10 years down the line. But because you actually lived Jay-Z, Beyonce, you're going to have a totally different perspective. And that's how I am with Michel'Le and Dre and Suge Knight. We were there. We remember the little stories. We remember, you know, her starting to come out years ago talking about these men abused her. So for me, I totally believe her 100%, because this is nothing new to me. It's just now that there's been this movie made about it. So I actually commend her for doing it, because even though I think that she still got issues, because I don't think Michel'Le is out the woods, because she's had several suicide attempts over her lifetime, and some of them that have been in the last few years. So I think that this girl needs to stay in therapy to deal with it, because she now and for a time was going through post-traumatic stress. Because after you've gone through, having your nose broken, your ribs broken, you know, all of the shit that went on with Suge Knight, you cannot come away from all of that totally, you know, okay. You're gonna have some lasting effects. You're gonna have flashbacks to when those men were beating you. You cannot help but to have those. So hopefully this girl is still in therapy. Hopefully she is finding her way. I feel like this movie was a breakthrough for Michel'Le. I feel like when she was on R&B Divas and fans were, supporting her, I think R&B Divas actually helped her open up more about what happened to her. And this movie is the final word from her. This is what happened to me. Whether you guys believe it or not, this is my story, and I'm telling it whether these men like it or not. I think it's freedom for her. And again, I commend her for doing it. I know it had to be hard reliving everything that she went through. I know it had to be hard for her to let her children see what she went through. That's got to be hard as a mother, because we want our children to have a certain image of us, but I'm pretty sure those children have suffered from some of the mental illness that Michel'Le actually has now. You know, this is a mess. It was a mess from the moment that she got with NWA. And this mess has, shaped her life and made her the woman that she is today. So again, I commend Michel'Le for doing the movie. Man, that had to be hard because, I've been through, and I had a Google hangout, and I was telling a couple of the ladies in the hangout that I've been through something a little similar, but I was strong enough very quickly to get the hell out of the situation, because I was taught if a man hits you, leave, because he will hit you again. You see where my upbringing made me, drop everything and leave. I didn't care what I was leaving. I knew that I had to get away. But Michel'Le's upbringing taught her to almost cling to these men. Y'all, I don't know. I'll say this in ending my video. It was a very good movie. Um, if, Dre is upset, then, oh well. And if Suge Knight is upset, then oh well. This is what happens when you do things that you should not be doing, you know? So with that, everyone, this movie was not, it was dark. It was, at the end of the movie, I actually was physically tired because just watching the chaos in her life, you're like, this girl went through a lot. So with that, everyone, thank you as always for watching my video, and you guys have a great day. Bye bye now.